I devoted 35 years of my life to Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital. 35 years of early mornings, late nights, missed birthdays, and postponed vacations. I gave that hospital everything I had, coordinating departments, managing crises, and keeping the whole operation running smoothly even when we were understaffed and overwhelmed. And in return, I built a life I was proud of. I put my son through college, helped him buy his first house, and supported him while he found his footing in the marketing world. I even helped pay for my granddaughter's private school tuition. But the day I mentioned my retirement, my family's reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of celebrating my decades of service, they started calculating what my absence would cost them financially. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The retirement party's today, Mom, but we can't make it. Grace has a recital, and Becky has that influencer event she can't miss, Tom explained over the phone that morning, not even trying to hide the dismissal in his voice. Besides, don't you think retirement is a bit premature? You're only 62, and hospitals always need administrators. What Tom and my daughter-in-law Becky didn't know was that my retirement announcement wasn't just about leaving my job. It was about revealing the secret I'd kept for 15 years, a secret that was about to change everything. The air conditioning in my office at Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital hummed softly as I placed the last of my personal items into a cardboard box. 35 years of memories, photos, thank you cards from staff, even the little ceramic bluebird Jasmine had given me on my 15th work anniversary, all packed away in less than 20 minutes. I paused at the window, gazing across the hospital grounds where I'd spent more of my waking hours than anywhere else in my adult life. Sarah, you're still here? Jasmine Chen appeared in my doorway, concern etched on her face. After 20 years working side by side, she could read my moods better than anyone. Just finishing up, I said, forcing a smile. Hard to believe it's really happening. Jasmine stepped into my office, closing the door behind her. Did you tell them about the foundation yet? I shook my head. They didn't show up. What? Jasmine's eyes widened. To your retirement party? But you've been planning it for months. Tom called this morning. Said they couldn't make it. Grace has a recital, and Becky has some influencer event she couldn't reschedule. I tried to keep my voice steady, but the hurt seeped through. Jasmine's expression hardened. After everything you've done for them? The tuition payments, the down payment on their house in Lakeside Heights, not to mention all those times you watched Grace when they had their important social events? I sighed, running my fingers along the edge of my desk. What hurts most is that Tom suggested I was being selfish for retiring. He actually said, "Don't you think you're being a bit premature? You're only 62. I mimicked his condescending tone. Of course he did, Jasmine muttered. When are you going to tell them about the Miller Medical Foundation, about the patents, about everything you've built? 15 years ago, during a particularly challenging time at Oak Ridge, I'd developed a patient transfer system that dramatically reduced wait times and medical errors during hospital transfers. What started as a simple organizational tool evolved into sophisticated software that caught the attention of Marcus Taylor, an executive at North Star Pharmaceuticals. Instead of just selling the idea, Marcus helped me patent it, develop it further, and license it to hospitals nationwide. The earnings were placed in a trust and eventually grew into the Miller Medical Foundation, a multi-million-dollar organization dedicated to improving patient care in rural hospitals. All the while, I continued my regular job at Oak Ridge, living modestly in my small house on Maple Street, driving my 10-year-old sedan, and diverting most of my regular salary to help Tom and his family maintain their lavish lifestyle in Lakeside Heights. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Family was everything to me, or so I thought. I was planning to announce it at the retirement party, I admitted. I had this whole speech prepared about new beginnings and the foundation's first. Major initiative to upgrade 3 rural hospitals. Marcus even flew in for it. And they just didn't show up? Jasmine's voice rose with indignation. Not just them. None of them came. Not Tom, not Becky, not even my brother-in-law Daniel, who promised he'd be there. I closed the lid on my box of belongings and taped it shut. Do you know what Tom said when I reminded him we'd been planning this for months? He said, "It's just a job, Mom. You'll find something else to do with your time." Jasmine's face flushed with anger. After you put his ungrateful behind through college? After you helped them buy that ridiculous house they couldn't afford? After all those weekends you spent with Grace so they could go to their fancy parties? I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. I know. But the worst part was what Becky texted me afterward. I pulled out my phone and read, "Since you'll have so much free time now, we were thinking you could pick Grace up from school every day and watch her until we get home around 7. It would save us a fortune on after-school care." Jasmine stared at me in disbelief. They didn't even ask. They just assumed you'd do it? Oh, there's more, I said, scrolling through my messages. Tom sent this an hour ago. By the way, Mom, since you're giving up your income, we should talk about your expenses. We can't keep covering for you if you're choosing not to work. Covering for you, Jasmine nearly shouted. Sarah, you've been supporting them for years. I felt a strange calm settle over me as I read Tom's message for the 20th time. All these years, I'd convinced myself that my sacrifices were appreciated, that my family understood the depth of my love. But in that moment, standing in my nearly empty office with only Jasmine beside me, the truth was unavoidable. To Tom and Becky, I wasn't a mother who had sacrificed. I was an asset whose value was diminishing. You know what, Jasmine? I think it's time I stop living for everyone else. I picked up my box and headed for the door. The foundation announcement can wait. First, I need to make some changes. What are you going to do? Jasmine asked, following me into the hallway. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm going to my retirement party, the one at Cooper's Cafe with the people who actually showed up. You, Dr. Hayes, the nursing staff, and Marcus. Then I'm going to drive to my cottage in Silver Springs, the one Tom doesn't know about, and spend a week figuring out my new life. Jasmine grinned. Now, that sounds like a plan I can get behind. Cooper's Cafe was packed when we arrived, nearly a key. 40 people from the hospital had shown up to celebrate my retirement. Dr. William Hayes, the hospital director, had ordered champagne. The nursing staff had pooled their money for a beautiful watch engraved with, "For Sarah, you kept time for all of us." And Marcus Taylor, who had flown in from Chicago for the occasion, stood in the corner with a proud smile. To Sarah Miller, Dr. Hayes announced, raising his glass. For 35 years of dedication, innovation, and compassion. Oak Ridge won't be the same without you. As the room erupted in cheers, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Mom, did you get my message about picking up Grace? We need to know by tomorrow. I slipped my phone back into my purse without responding and accepted the champagne flute Dr. Hayes offered me. For once, Tom could wait. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Stories were shared, tears were shed, and promises to stay in touch were made. By the time I left Cooper's Cafe, my heart felt full in a way it hadn't in years. These people, my colleagues, my professional family, had shown me more appreciation in one evening than Tom and Becky had in the last decade. As I drove toward Silver Springs, I called Daniel, my late husband's brother and the only family member who had consistently shown me kindness over the years. Sarah, I'm so sorry I missed your retirement party, Daniel said, genuine regret in his voice. I had an emergency with one of my patients. As a veterinarian, Daniel's schedule was often unpredictable. It's okay, Daniel. I understand, I said, meaning it. But I need to ask you something. Did Tom ever mention to you that he's been supporting me financially? Daniel's confusion was evident even through the phone. What? No, that's absurd. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. If anything, I always got the impression you were helping them. That house of theirs is way above what a mid-level marketing executive and a part-time influencer could afford. That's what I thought, I murmured. Daniel, there's something I've never told any of you, something big. You sound serious. Is everything okay? It will be, I assured him. I'm heading to my cottage in Silver Springs for a week to clear my head. When I get back, I'd like to meet with you. There are some changes coming, and I want you to hear about them from me first. Of course, Sarah. Whatever you need. I ended the call feeling more resolved than ever. The lies Tom had apparently been telling about supporting me, likely to justify their extravagant lifestyle to others, were the final straw. It was time to reclaim my narrative. The cottage in Silver Springs was exactly as I'd left it, a cozy, waterfront retreat I'd purchased with the first substantial licensing payment from my patient transfer system. It was my sanctuary, the one place I kept just for myself, and Tom had no idea it existed. Here, overlooking the gentle waves of the Pacific, I could finally think clearly. I spent the first day simply resting, watching the ocean, and drinking tea on the porch. On the second day, I began making phone calls to my lawyer, to Marcus, to the foundation's board members. By the end of the week, I had a plan. When I returned to Pinecrest, I was greeted by 17 missed calls from Tom and 23 increasingly irritated text messages demanding to know where I was and why I wasn't responding to their request about Grace's after-school care. I texted back a simple message. We need to talk. Family dinner at my house, Sunday at 6 p.m. It's important. Tom's reply came almost instantly. We're busy Sunday. Can't you just come to our place tomorrow? We need to discuss the Grace situation. I stood firm. Sunday at 6. I've invited Daniel as well. This isn't a request, Tom. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, and reappeared several times before his grudging response arrived. Fine, but we can't stay long. Sunday evening arrived with perfect late summer weather. I'd spent the day preparing my mother's lasagna recipe, Tom's favorite since childhood, and setting the table with my best dishes. This might be our last family dinner for a while, and despite everything, I wanted it to be special. Daniel arrived first, bringing a bouquet of lilies and a warm hug. You look different, he observed. Retirement agrees with you. I smiled, feeling more centered than I had in years. It's not retirement, it's reclaiming my life. Tom, Becky, and Grace arrived 20 minutes late. Grace immediately ran to hug me, her 7-year-old enthusiasm untainted by her parents' attitudes. Grandma, I made you a picture. She thrust a colorful drawing into my hands, a stick figure with gray hair surrounded by hearts. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you. I knelt to her level and hugged her tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Tom checked his watch conspicuously. Mom, we can only stay for an hour. Becky has an important Instagram Live event tonight. Becky didn't even look up from her phone. It's with that luxury skincare brand I told you about, the one that might sponsor me if this goes well. I understand, I said calmly. Let's eat while the food is hot. Grace, would you help me bring the salad to the table? Throughout dinner, Tom and Becky dominated the conversation with complaints about their busy schedules, the cost of everything, and how difficult it was to find reliable childcare now that I had suddenly decided to retire. Daniel caught my eye several times, his expression a mix of disbelief and sympathy. After dessert, when Grace was happily occupied with a puzzle in the living room, I cleared my throat. I have some news to share with all of you. If it's about reconsidering retirement, I think that's wise. Tom interjected. In fact, Dr. Hayes mentioned they haven't filled your position yet. You could probably get your job back if you called. Tomorrow. I'm not going back to Oak Ridge, I said firmly. My retirement is final. But that's not what I wanted to discuss. I took a deep breath and looked each of them in the eye. 15 years ago, I developed a patient transfer system that has since been implemented in hospitals across the country. The licensing and patent rights have generated significant income, which I used to establish the Miller Medical Foundation. The table fell silent. Becky finally looked up from her phone, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows raised in confusion. What are you talking about, Mom? Tom asked, his tone suggesting I was making up stories. I'm talking about the fact that I've been running a multi-million-dollar foundation while continuing to work at Oak Ridge. I explained patiently. The foundation funds improvements in rural hospitals, provides medical scholarships, and is about to launch a major initiative to upgrade 3 facilities in underserved communities. Daniel's face split into a wide grin. Sarah, that's incredible. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I wanted the foundation to be established first, I said. And honestly, it never seemed relevant to our family conversations. Tom's expression shifted from dismissal to calculation so rapidly it was almost comical. A foundation? Like, with actual money? Why were you still working at the hospital if you had this foundation? Because I loved my job, I said simply. And because the foundation's purpose isn't to enrich me, it's to improve healthcare for people who need it most. Becky leaned forward, suddenly interested. But you must have some personal benefit, right? I mean, founders usually pay themselves something. I nodded. I receive a modest salary as the foundation's director, yes, and there are certain assets that belong to me personally. Like what? Tom pressed. Like my cottage in Silver Springs, for instance, and some investment. Accounts. Tom's jaw dropped. You have a cottage? Since when? For about 12 years now, I said. It's where I was last week when you were trying to reach me. The revelation hung in the air like a thundercloud. Tom and Becky exchanged glances, clearly recalibrating everything they thought they knew about me. So what you're saying, Tom began slowly, is that you've been wealthy this whole time? While we've been struggling with mortgage payments and tuition costs? Something in his tone, the entitlement, the accusation, ignited a spark of anger in my chest. Struggling? Tom, I gave you the down payment for your house. I've been paying half of Grace's tuition. I've covered your car payments more times than I can count. Well, yes, but... And let's be clear, I continued, my voice steady, about who has been supporting whom. For years, I've diverted most of my hospital salary to help maintain your lifestyle in Lakeside Heights. A lifestyle, I might add, that you couldn't afford on your own. Becky's face flushed red. That's not fair. Tom works hard, and my influencer career is just taking off. I never said Tom doesn't work hard, I clarified, but the financial reality is what it is. And now that I've retired from Oak Ridge, I'll be devoting my full attention to the foundation, which means some changes are coming. Tom's expression darkened. What kind of changes? For starters, I'll be spending more time at my cottage. It's closer to the rural hospitals we're working with. I took a sip of water before continuing. And I'll no longer be providing the monthly support you've come to expect. It's time for you to live within your means. The silence that followed was deafening. Becky's knuckles turned white around her wineglass. Tom's face cycled through shock, anger, and something that looked almost like panic. You can't just cut us off, he finally sputtered. We have commitments, expectations. The lifestyle we've built was built largely on my contributions, I finished for him. Contributions that came from love, not obligation. But when you didn't show up to my retirement party, an event you knew meant the world to me, and then immediately tried to turn me into an unpaid babysitter. It forced me to reevaluate our relationship. Is this punishment? Becky asked incredulously. For missing one party? Daniel cleared his throat. I think what Sarah is saying is that there seems to be a fundamental lack of respect here. She's given everything to this family, and when she finally decided to do something for herself, you treated it as an inconvenience. Tom turned on his uncle. Stay out of this. It's between Mom and us. Actually, I interjected, I asked Daniel to be here precisely because he is family, and he deserves to know what's happening. I softened my tone, looking at my son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, the young man I'd supported through every crisis and celebration. Tom, this isn't about punishment. It's about boundaries. For too long, I've allowed you and Becky to treat me as a resource rather than a person. That stops now. So you're just abandoning us? Tom's voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, I glimpsed the vulnerable child beneath the entitled adult. No, Tom. I'm never abandoning you or Grace. I'm simply changing the terms of our relationship. I reached across the table and took his hand. I will always be your mother, and I will always love you. But from now on, my financial support comes with conditions, respect, appreciation, and mutual care. And if we don't meet these conditions, Becky asked, making air quotes with her fingers, then you'll need to adjust your expectations and your budget, I said simply. Tom pulled his hand away. I can't believe you're doing this, after everything we've been through as a family. That's just it, Tom. We haven't been functioning as a healthy family. We've been functioning as a one-way support system, with me giving and you taking. I stood up and began clearing dessert plates. I think it's time we try a different approach. The rest of the evening was tense. Tom and Becky left earlier than their promised hour, barely saying goodbye. Only Grace hugged me tightly, whispering, I love you, Grandma. Can I still come visit you? Any time, sweetheart, I promised, fighting back tears. Grandma's door is always open for you. After they left, Daniel helped me wash the dishes in companionable silence. Finally, as we dried the last plate, he spoke. You did the right thing, Sarah. It won't be easy, but it was necessary. I know, I sighed. I just wish it hadn't come to this. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. They'll come around, maybe not, right away, but eventually. And in the meantime, you have a foundation to run and a life to live. As I closed the door behind Daniel and returned to my quiet house, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and liberation. For decades, I had defined myself through the lens of service, to the hospital, to my patients, to my family. Now, I was stepping into a new identity. Sarah Miller, foundation director, cottage owner, woman reclaiming her power. My phone pinged, with a text from Jasmine. How did it go? I smiled and typed back. Exactly as expected. Difficult but necessary. Coffee tomorrow? I'll tell you everything. Before going to bed, I checked my email one last time and found a message from Marcus. Board approves your proposal unanimously. Rural Hospital Initiative can begin next month. Ready when you are, Director Miller. I closed my laptop and gazed out the window at the night sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and probably more tears. But for the first time in years, I was following my own North Star. And despite the pain of tonight's confrontation, I wouldn't trade this feeling of authenticity for anything. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that the retirement party my family had forgotten wasn't just marking the end of my hospital career. It was celebrating the beginning of my true self. And that was worth more than all the missed parties in the world. The morning after our family dinner, I awoke to 7 missed calls from Tom and a dozen text messages that cycled between guilt-tripping, veiled threats, and attempts at reconciliation. The final message, sent at 3:47 a.m., read, "You can't just drop a bomb like this and expect us not to react. We need to talk again. Properly this time." I placed my phone on the nightstand and went through my morning routine, stretching exercises, brewing a pot of Earl Grey, and enjoying my breakfast on the back porch while watching the cardinals at the bird feeder. The simple pleasure of unhurried time was still novel after decades of rushed mornings and hospital emergencies. By 10 a.m., I was dressed and driving to meet Jasmine at Cooper's Cafe as promised. The cozy establishment was quieter now than during my retirement celebration, with just a few regulars scattered among the mismatched tables and vintage chairs. Jasmine was already waiting, 2 steaming mugs in front of her. "I ordered your usual," she said, sliding a ceramic mug of chai tea toward me as I sat down. "You look different today. Lighter somehow." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "I feel lighter and heavier. Does that make any sense?" "Perfect sense," Jasmine nodded. "So, how did the big revelation go?" I recounted the previous evening's events in detail, the initial shock on Tom and Becky's faces, their rapid recalculation of our relationship once money entered the equation, and the entitled anger that followed my boundary setting. "The thing that bothers me most," I confessed, "is that neither of them even asked about the foundation itself, what it does, why I started it, how many people it's helped. They only wanted to know how it affected them financially." Jasmine reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Are you surprised?" I shook my head slowly. "No, and that's the saddest part." "So what happens now?" Jasmine asked. "Now, I focus on the foundation. The board approved our rural hospital initiative. Starting next month, we'll begin upgrading equipment and infrastructure at 3 facilities in counties where the nearest major hospital is over an hour away." Jasmine smiled. "That's what I want to hear. The Sarah Miller I know, making real change happen." As we continued our conversation, the cafe door swung open, and Rebecca strode in, sunglasses perched on her head, designer handbag dangling from her wrist. She spotted us immediately and made a beeline for our table. "Sarah," she said coolly, deliberately using my first name instead of Mom, as she typically did in public. "We need to talk." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "I believe Sarah is currently engaged in a conversation." Becky ignored her completely, focusing on me. "Tom is devastated. He barely slept last night. Is that what you wanted? To hurt your own son?" I gestured to the empty chair at our table. "Would you like to join us, Becky?" She remained standing, arms crossed. "Actually, I'd prefer to speak with you privately. This is a family matter." "Jasmine has been my friend for 20 years, I replied calmly. "Anything you need to say can be said in front of her." Becky's perfectly contoured face tightened with irritation. "Fine. Tom and I have been talking and we think you're being impulsive. This whole foundation thing, it's clearly some kind of midlife crisis." Jasmine stifled a laugh, quickly disguising it as a cough. "I've been running the foundation for 15 years, I pointed out. That would be a remarkably long midlife crisis. Becky waved her hand dismissively. "Whatever. The point is, you've made a unilateral decision that affects all of us without any consideration for how it impacts our family." "You mean the way you and Tom made a unilateral decision not to attend my retirement party? Or the way you decided I would become Grace's full-time caretaker without asking me?" I kept my voice level, despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "That's completely different," Becky insisted. "We're Grace's parents. We make decisions based on what's best for her. And I'm an adult woman who makes decisions based on what's best for me and the communities I serve," I countered. "I'm not asking for your approval, Becky. I'm informing you of changes that are already in motion." Becky's composure slipped. "Do you have any idea what this will do to us? We have the country club membership renewal coming up, Grace's ballet lessons, just increase their rates. The house in Lakeside Heights requires a certain standard of upkeep. We can't just downsize overnight. I sipped my tea, letting her words hang in the air for a moment. Those sound like personal budgeting decisions that you and Tom will need to make. I'm sorry if that's challenging, but it's part of adult life. This isn't about budgeting. Becky's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. This is about loyalty and family obligation. After everything Tom has done for you, what exactly has Tom done for me? I interrupted, genuinely curious about what narrative they'd constructed. Becky blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. He visits you every holiday. He brought Grace to see you at least twice a month. He calls you whenever something important happens. You're describing the basic behavior of a son toward his mother, I said gently. Not exceptional sacrifice. Becky's face flushed. You know what? Fine. Be this way. But don't expect us to come running when you're old and need someone to take care of you. You're burning bridges you might need later. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Becky, I'm still Grace's grandmother. This isn't about her. My door is always open to her, and I hope you'll remember that. Becky paused, her back still to me. We'll see. And with that, she stalked out of the cafe, the bell above the door tinkling cheerfully in her wake. Jasmine let out a low whistle. Well, that was something. You okay? I nodded, surprised to find that I truly was. The old me would have capitulated by now, written a check, apologized for being selfish, promised to watch Grace whenever they needed. But I'm done being taken for granted. Good for you, Jasmine said fiercely. Now tell me more about these rural hospitals. Over the next week, the situation with Tom and Becky escalated. They progressed from angry texts to publicly tagging me in passive-aggressive social media posts about family loyalty and selfish grandparents. I ignored them all, focusing instead on my work with Marcus to finalize the Rural Hospital Initiative details. The peace I found at my cottage in Silver Springs became my refuge. I spent weekends there, walking along the beach at dawn, reading books I'd put off for years, and hosting small dinner parties for the new friends I was making in the coastal community. Daniel visited twice, bringing his gentle humor and steadfast support. 10 days after the confrontation at Cooper's Cafe, I received a letter from Tom and Becky's lawyer, claiming that I had made verbal financial commitments to them regarding Grace's education and their mortgage. The letter demanded that I honor these prior agreements or face potential legal action. I showed the letter to my own attorney, a sharp-minded woman named Elena Vasquez who had been handling the foundation's legal affairs for years. This is ridiculous, Elena said, scanning the document in her downtown office. They have no case. Verbal promises of financial gifts aren't legally enforceable contracts, especially when the gifts were already given freely with no expectation of repayment. So what do? We respond professionally, refuting their claims and making it clear that any further harassment will be met with appropriate legal countermeasures. Elena adjusted her glasses. And Sarah, I hate to ask this, but do you have documentation of the financial support you've provided them over the years? I nodded. Everything. Bank transfers, checks, receipts. I've always been meticulous about record keeping. Good, Elena said. Because if they push this, they're not going to like what comes to light. Elena's response to Tom's lawyer was polite but firm, pointing out the legal fallacies in their claims and attaching a partial record of my financial contributions to their household over the past 5 years. The total sum, just over $147,000, spoke for itself. We didn't hear from their lawyer again. However, the emotional warfare continued. One evening, as I returned to my house after a foundation board meeting, I found Tom waiting on my front porch, his expression a carefully constructed mask of concern. Mom, he said, standing as I approached, we need to talk, just you and me this time. I unlocked the door and gestured for him to follow me inside. Would you like some tea? No, I want straight answers, he said, following me into the living room but remaining standing. Why are you doing this to us? To your own family? I set my purse down and took a seat on the sofa. I'm not doing anything to you, Tom. I'm making choices about my own life and resources. Resources that you've always shared with us, he countered. Resources that we've come to depend on. And that's the problem, I said quietly. You're a 35-year-old man with a good job, a talented wife, and a beautiful daughter. You shouldn't be dependent on your mother's income. Tom's face hardened. So this is some tough love scenario? Teaching us fiscal responsibility by pulling the rug out from under us? No, Tom. This is me recognizing an unhealthy pattern and changing it. For years, I've enabled your lifestyle while receiving very little respect or consideration in return. The retirement party was just the final wake-up call. That damn party again! Tom threw up his hands. We missed one event, Mom. One? And now you're punishing us by withholding financial support and threatening our stability? I studied my son, the tight set of his jaw, the defensive posture, the entitlement radiating from every pore. When had he become this person? Had he always been this way and I simply refused to see it? It wasn't just one event, Tom. It was the culmination of a pattern. When was the last time you asked about my work, my dreams, my life? When was the last time you offered to help me with anything without expecting something in return? Tom shifted, uncomfortably. That's not fair. I've been busy building my career, raising Grace. I was busy too, I interjected. I worked 60-hour weeks at the hospital while simultaneously building the foundation. Yet I still made time to support you, in every way possible. That's different. You're the parent. And parents deserve respect, Tom. Basic human respect. Something I haven't felt from you or Becky in a very long time. Tom's expression shifted, a calculating look entering his eyes. What if we did better? What if we made more of an effort to include you, to show appreciation? Would you reconsider the financial support then? The transactional nature of his offer, essentially performing appreciation in exchange for money, made my heart ache. This isn't a negotiation, Tom. I'm not withholding funds to manipulate you into being nicer to me. I'm redirecting my resources toward the foundation, because that work fulfills me and helps people who truly need it. And we don't need it? His voice rose. You'd rather help strangers than your own flesh and blood? I've been helping you your entire life, I replied calmly. And I'll continue to be there for Grace. College fund, special occasions, emergencies. But the monthly stipends, the mortgage assistance, the country club fees, those are ending. You and Becky need to live within your means. Tom's face darkened. You know what? Keep your money. We'll be fine without it. But don't expect to see Grace anytime soon. Becky and I decide who has access to our daughter, and right now, I'm not sure you're a positive influence. The threat hit me like a physical blow. Are you saying you'll keep my granddaughter from me because I won't finance your lifestyle? I'm saying actions have consequences, Tom replied coldly. You've made your choice, and now we're making ours. As he stormed toward the door, I called after him. Tom, please don't do this. Don't use Grace as a pawn. He paused at the threshold. You should have thought about that before you abandoned your family. The door slammed behind him, rattling the photographs on the wall. Smiling images of happier times that now felt like artifacts from a different life. I sat in the silent house, tears streaming down my face. This was the outcome I had feared most, losing my relationship with Grace. The little girl who brought light and laughter into my world, who still saw me as simply grandma, rather than a financial resource or an obligation. The thought of her confusion and hurt at my sudden absence from her life was almost unbearable. For a moment, I considered capitulating, calling Tom, agreeing to his terms, resuming the financial support just to maintain my connection with Grace. It would be so easy to fall back into the familiar pattern, to purchase peace at the cost of my self-respect. Instead, I reached for my phone and called Daniel. "They're using Grace as leverage," I said when he answered, my voice thick with tears. Daniel's response was immediate and fierce. "That's emotional blackmail, Sarah. I won't let them do this, to you or to her." "What can we do? They're her parents. They control access." "Maybe legally," Daniel acknowledged. "But they're not the only adults in Grace's life. I'm her great-uncle. I see her regularly for weekend activities that Tom and Becky are too busy for, and Tom may be angry, but he still trusts me." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that I continue to be part of Grace's life, and when I see her, perhaps her grandmother happens to be around too." His tone softened. "This won't last forever, Sarah. Eventually, Tom will realize he's only hurting his daughter by keeping her from you." "I hope you're right," I whispered. "I can handle losing the relationship with Tom and Becky if that's what they choose. But Grace is innocent in all this." "She is," Daniel agreed. "And she adores you. Remember that. When things get tough." After we hung up, I wandered through my house, touching photographs of Grace, her first birthday, her kindergarten graduation, the day we planted sunflowers together in my garden. The pain of potential separation was acute, but underneath it, a quiet determination was building. I would not be manipulated through my love for my granddaughter. There had to be a better way forward. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from Dr. William Hayes at Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital. "Sarah," he said, his usually confident voice hesitant, "I'm calling because, well, there's been an unusual situation here. Your son Tom came to see me yesterday." My stomach tightened. "What did he want?" "He asked a lot of questions about your work history, your retirement, and particularly about your mental state in recent months. He implied that you might be experiencing some cognitive decline or emotional instability." "He what?" I gasped. "He suggested that your decision to establish this medical foundation might be a sign of impaired judgment. He asked if the hospital had noticed any concerning behaviors before your retirement." Dr. Hayes paused. "Sarah, I want you to know that I shut this down immediately. I told him that you were one of the most competent, clear-thinking administrators I've ever worked with, and that your foundation work has been exemplary." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you, William." "Don't thank me for telling the truth," he replied firmly, "but I thought you should know what's happening." This felt calculated. After thanking Dr. Hayes again, I hung up and immediately called Elena. As I explained Tom's latest tactic, her voice grew increasingly concerned. "Sarah, this is moving beyond family drama into potentially damaging territory," she warned. "If he's approaching your former employer with false claims about your mental capacity, he might be building a case for something more serious." "Like what?" "Like an attempt to claim that you're not competent to manage your own finances. If he could convince a court of that, which he can't, but the attempt itself would be harmful, he could potentially gain some control over your assets." The thought was chilling. What should I do? First, we document everything. The conversation with Dr. Hayes, the emotional blackmail regarding Grace, the lawyer's letter, all of it. Elena's voice was calm but serious. Second, we prepare a formal cease and desist letter warning Tom that any further attempts to defame you or interfere with your professional relationships will result in legal action. "I never thought it would come to this," I said quietly. "Legal threats against my own son." "I know this is difficult," Elena sympathized. "But sometimes setting firm boundaries is the only way to prevent further escalation. Tom needs to understand that while you're his mother, you're also an independent woman with rights that must be respected." After our call, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the familiar view of my backyard garden. The rose bushes I'd planted when Tom graduated college, the maple tree that had grown from a sapling to a towering presence, marking the passage of years. The garden had witnessed so much of our family history, both the joyful moments and the painful ones. My phone pinged with a text from Jasmine. Lunch tomorrow? Marcus wants to discuss the community outreach program for the rural hospitals. Work, purpose, impact. These were the anchors I needed now, the reminders of who I was beyond my role as Tom's mother and Grace's grandmother. I texted back my agreement, then made myself a cup of tea and carried it out to the garden bench. As the afternoon sun filtered through the maple leaves, casting dappled shadows across the lawn, I allowed myself to fully feel the grief of what was happening. The family I had sacrificed everything for was fracturing, not because I had withdrawn financial support, but because the love I thought we shared had been contingent all along, at least on Tom and Becky's side. Yet amidst the sorrow, there was also a growing sense of clarity. For decades, I had defined my worth through what I could give to others, to my patients at Oak Ridge, to the communities served by the foundation, and especially to Tom and his family. Now, I was learning to value myself independently of those contributions, to recognize that I deserved respect not because of what I provided, but simply because of who I was. The cease and desist letter was delivered to Tom the following week. Elena had crafted it carefully, professional but not cold, firm but not threatening. It outlined the problematic behaviors, clarified my boundaries, and specified the legal consequences if those boundaries were violated. Tom's response came via text, a single line. I never thought my own mother would sick lawyers on me. I guess money really does change people. The irony of his accusation wasn't lost on me. I had been financially comfortable for years without it changing how I treated him. It was the revelation of that comfort that had changed how he treated me. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I threw myself into foundation work, finalizing plans for the Rural Hospital Initiative. Marcus and I visited each of the 3 targeted facilities, meeting with local staff to understand their specific needs and challenges. The gratitude in their eyes when we outlined the improvements coming their way was a powerful reminder of why this work mattered. 2 weeks later, Daniel called with unexpected news. Sarah, I need to give you a heads up. I was at the park with Grace yesterday, and she told me something concerning. My pulse quickened. Is she okay? She's fine, but she's confused. She said Tom and Becky have been telling her that you don't want to see her anymore because you're too busy with your new rich friends. They told her you moved away without saying goodbye. Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. That's absolutely not true. I've been texting Tom every week asking to see her. I know, Daniel said gently. I told Grace that wasn't true, that you miss her very much and would love to see her any time. I suggested she ask her parents if she could call you. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Thank you, Daniel. Did she say anything else? Yes, and this is why I thought you should know right away. She mentioned that they're moving to a new house soon because the big house is too expensive now. It sounds like Tom and Becky are downsizing. The news brought a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness that Grace's life was being disrupted, vindication that Tom and Becky were finally facing financial reality, and worry about how this transition might be affecting my granddaughter. Did she seem upset about moving? I asked. Not really, Daniel replied. She was more upset about not seeing you. She specifically asked me to tell you that she misses your Sunday pancakes and the books you read together. The message pierced straight to my heart. I miss those things too. So much. Sarah, Daniel's voice turned serious. I think it's time for direct intervention. Not through lawyers or intermediaries, but face to face. Grace deserves better than to be caught in the middle of this. I've been trying to see her for weeks, I reminded him. Tom won't respond to my requests. Then don't ask, Daniel suggested. Next Saturday is Grace's ballet recital at the community center. Tom and Becky will be there, and so will I. You should come too. It's a public event. They can't stop you from attending. The thought of confronting Tom and Becky in public made my stomach churn, but the chance to see Grace overpowered my apprehension. I'll be there, I promised. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my kitchen, wrestling with the situation from every angle. The legal boundaries were necessary, but they weren't enough. This wasn't just about protecting my assets or my reputation. It was about protecting my relationship with Grace and, if possible, finding a path toward healing with Tom. By morning, I had made a decision. I called Marcus and asked for his input on a new initiative for the foundation, one that would complement our rural hospital work while potentially building a bridge back to my family. The day of Grace's ballet recital arrived with perfect spring weather. I wore a simple blue dress, Grace's favorite color, and brought a bouquet of pink roses, her favorite flower. My hands trembled slightly as I entered the community center, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. Daniel spotted me first, waving from a row near the middle. As I made my way toward him, I caught sight of Tom and Becky several rows ahead, their backs to me. They hadn't noticed my arrival yet. "You okay?" Daniel whispered as I slid into the seat beside him. I nodded, though my heart was racing. "Have you seen Grace? How is she?" "Excited," Daniel smiled. "I peeked backstage before you arrived. She's in full costume, practicing her steps and looking absolutely adorable." The lights dimmed before I could respond, and the recital began. One by one, groups of young dancers took the stage, performing with varying degrees of coordination and enthusiasm. The audience clapped encouragingly after each number, parents beaming with pride. When Grace's group appeared, 7-year-olds, in pale pink tutus with butterfly wings attached to their backs, tears sprang to my eyes. My granddaughter looked so focused, her little face serious as she concentrated on remembering the steps. At one point, she glanced toward the audience, scanning the faces. Was she looking for me? As the final notes of their music faded, the audience erupted in applause. I clapped until my hands hurt, pride swelling in my chest. This remarkable little person, part of my heart walking around outside my body. How could anyone think I would willingly stay away from her? After the performance, parents and family members gathered in the lobby with flowers and congratulations. I stood beside Daniel, watching the door where the young dancers would emerge. My stomach knotted with anticipation. Grace appeared in a flurry of excitement, still in her costume but with a sweater thrown over it. She spotted Tom and Becky first, running toward them with a wide smile. They hugged her, Becky adjusting the butterfly wings that had tilted during her exit. Then Grace looked past her parents and saw me. Her face lit up with pure joy. "Grandma!" she shrieked, breaking away from Tom and Becky and racing toward me. I knelt down to catch her in a fierce hug, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her small arms tight around my neck. "You were amazing, sweetheart," I whispered, the most beautiful butterfly on stage. "You came," she said, pulling back to look at me with wide, happy eyes. "I told Daddy you would come if you knew about my dance." I swallowed hard. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I offered her the roses, which she accepted with a delighted gasp. "Pink? My favorite." "I know," I smiled, "and you're my favorite ballerina." Tom and Becky approached, their expressions a mix of surprise and displeasure. Becky spoke first, her voice tightly controlled. "Grace, sweetheart, come along. We're going to Grandma Susan's for your celebration lunch." Grace's face fell. "But Grandma Sarah just got here. Can't she come too?" "No, honey, it's just family today," Tom said firmly, not meeting my eyes. Grace looked confused. "But Grandma is family." The innocent logic of a child, cutting through all the adult complications. I squeezed Grace's hand. "It's okay, sweetheart. We can visit another time. I'm so proud of your performance today. Tom finally looked at me, his expression guarded. How did you know about the recital? I told her, Daniel interjected, because family should be present for important moments. Tom's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Grace tugged on his hand. Daddy, can Grandma Sarah come to our new house when we move? My room has yellow walls, her favorite. An uncomfortable silence followed. Tom and Becky exchanged glances, clearly caught off guard by Grace's question. You're moving? I asked gently. Tom's posture became defensive. Yes, to Westview. It's a nice neighborhood, good schools. Westview was significantly more modest than Lakeside Heights, a solid middle-class area with smaller homes and fewer luxury amenities. This was tangible evidence of the financial adjustments they were making. I'm sure it will be lovely, I said sincerely. Grace, I would love to see your new yellow room whenever your parents say it's okay. Becky's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Perhaps she was tired of the conflict too, or maybe she was simply responding to Grace's obvious delight at seeing me. We should get going, she said, but her tone was less hostile than before. Grace, say goodbye to Grandma Sarah for now. Grace hugged me again, whispering in my ear, I missed you so much, Grandma. Daddy said you were too busy for me, but I knew that wasn't true. Never, I whispered back fiercely. I'm never too busy for you. I love you to the moon and back. As they walked away, Grace clutching her pink roses, she turned back several times to wave. I waved back, my heart both full and aching. Daniel placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. That went better than expected. Did it? I wasn't sure what I had expected, but the brevity of the interaction left me hungry for more time with Grace. Yes, Daniel said confidently. Tom didn't make a scene. Becky seemed less hostile, and most importantly, Grace knows you came for her, despite what they've been telling her. He was right, of course. Small steps, small victories. These were the building blocks of reconciliation, if reconciliation was even possible. As we walked to the parking lot, I shared my new foundation initiative with Daniel. We're establishing a pediatric mental health program at Oak Ridge, a dedicated wing for children who need psychological support, especially those from families experiencing major transitions, divorce, relocation, loss. Daniel raised an eyebrow. And this just happened to become a priority now? I smiled slightly. The need has always been there, but yes, recent events have highlighted it for me. Children are so vulnerable to adult conflicts, yet they often have the fewest resources to process their feelings. And will this new program be called the Grace Miller Wing? Daniel asked perceptively. No, I shook my head. This isn't about buying my way back into their lives or scoring points. It's about channeling my pain into something constructive. If my family situation can't be immediately healed, at least other families might benefit from what I'm learning through this experience. Daniel nodded approvingly. That's what I've always admired about you, Sarah. You transformed difficulty into purpose. As I drove home from the recital, hope and uncertainty battled within me. The joy of seeing Grace, the pain of our brief interaction, the subtle shifts in Tom and Becky's demeanor. What did it all mean for our future? I didn't know. But for the first time in weeks, reconciliation seemed possible, if not immediate. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. It was Marcus, calling with updates about the Rural Hospital Initiative. As I listened to his progress report, standing in my garden with spring blooming around me, I felt the pieces of my life realigning. Not as they had been before, that wasn't possible or even desirable, but in a new configuration that honored both my family bonds and my individual journey. The path forward remained unclear, but I was no longer walking it in the dark. Grace's smiling face, the pink roses clutched in her small hands, Daniel's steady support, the meaningful work of the foundation. These were the lights guiding me toward whatever came next. And for today, that was enough. 3 days after Grace's ballet recital, I received an unexpected text from Tom. "We're moving this weekend. Grace keeps asking if you can help set up her new room. If you're free Sunday afternoon, you can come by. Address is 247 Maple Lane, Westview, 2 p.m. The message was devoid of warmth, but it was an olive branch of sorts, the first Tom had extended since our confrontation. I read and reread it, searching for hidden agendas or traps, but ultimately decided to take it at face value. Progress. With my son would come in small tentative steps if it came at all. I texted back a simple, "I'll be there, thank you." That Sunday, I drove to Westview with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The address led me to a modest 2-story colonial with fresh white paint and navy shutters. Moving boxes were stacked on the front porch, and a rental truck sat in the driveway. The house was perhaps half the size of their Lakeside Heights residence, but it had a certain charm. Established trees, a small front garden, a neighborhood where children could safely ride bikes on the sidewalk. I parked across the street and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. This visit wasn't just about helping Grace decorate her room. It was a potential turning point in my fractured relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. I needed to be both firm in my boundaries and open to reconciliation, a delicate balance to maintain. As I approached the front door, it swung open before I could knock. Grace stood there, beaming, still in her painting clothes, a oversized t-shirt splattered with yellow paint. "Grandma, you came." She threw her arms around my waist, nearly knocking me backward with the force of her enthusiasm. I hugged her, tightly, savoring the moment. "Of course I came. I wouldn't miss helping with your new room." Grace grabbed my hand, tugging me inside. "Come see? We already painted the walls, but I saved the best part for you to help with. Mom bought wall stickers with butterflies and flowers, and Dad said you're really good at making things pretty." The interior of the house was chaos, half unpacked. Boxes everywhere, furniture at odd angles, the lingering smell of fresh paint. But underneath the disarray, I could see the bones of a comfortable family home emerging. Tom appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Our eyes met, and for a moment neither of us spoke. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a day's worth of stubble on his chin. "Mom," he said finally, with a nod that was neither warm nor cold. "Thanks for coming." "Thank you for inviting me," I replied carefully. "The house looks promising." He glanced around, as if seeing the chaos through my eyes. "It's smaller than what we're used to, but it's functional." The unspoken admission hung in the air between us. They couldn't afford their previous lifestyle without my support. But rather than point this out, I simply nodded. "Sometimes smaller is cozier. Where's Becky?" "She's at a thing," Tom said vaguely. "An influencer event downtown. She'll be back later." I suspected Becky's absence was deliberate, a way to avoid facing me directly. But that was her choice, and I wouldn't comment on it. "Grandma, come on!" Grace tugged at my hand again, impatient with the adult conversation. "My room is upstairs." I followed her up the narrow staircase to a sunny bedroom at the back of the house. The walls were indeed a cheerful yellow, and someone, probably Tom, had assembled a white wooden bed and a matching desk. Moving boxes were stacked in one corner, and decoration supplies were spread across the floor. Butterfly wall stickers, a string of fairy lights, framed photos waiting to be hung. "See? Yellow, just like you love," Grace announced proudly. "Dad said you would like it." The thought that Tom had remembered my favorite color and made a point of telling Grace touched something deep inside me. Perhaps not all connections were severed after all. "It's perfect," I told her, running my hand along the freshly painted wall. "Now, Where should we start with these butterflies? For the next 2 hours, Grace and I transformed her room, carefully, placing butterfly stickers in a pattern that seemed to show them flying up toward the ceiling. We hung fairy lights around her window, arranged books on her shelf, and set up framed photos of family moments, including several of Grace and me at the beach last summer. Tom came in and out, bringing glasses of lemonade, helping with the eye. Higher placements and even joining our conversation occasionally. His manner remained guarded, but there were moments, brief flashes of the sun I remembered, when he laughed at Grace's jokes or reminisced about his own childhood bedroom. As we worked, Grace chattered away, filling me in on everything I'd missed during our weeks apart. Her ballet progress, a lost tooth, a new friend at school. I drank in every detail, storing them away like precious gems. "Why don't we visit Grandma's house anymore?" Grace asked suddenly, as we were arranging stuffed animals on her bed. "I miss the bird feeder in your garden and the swing on your porch." Tom, who was hanging a small mirror on the wall, froze slightly. I took a deep breath, careful not to contradict anything he might have told her. "Well, everyone's been very busy lately with the move and everything," I said gently. "But you're welcome to visit anytime your parents say it's okay." Grace looked at her father expectantly. "Can we go next weekend, Dad, please?" Tom hesitated, glancing between his daughter's hopeful face and my careful neutrality. "We'll see. Gracie, we have a lot to do with the new house still." Grace's face fell slightly, but she nodded. "Okay, but soon?" "Soon," Tom agreed, his voice softer than before. By late afternoon, Grace's room was transformed. She twirled in the center, arms outstretched, admiring our work. "It's the best room ever. Thank you, Grandma." "You're very welcome, sweetheart." I smiled, savoring her joy. Every princess needs a special castle. Grace yawned suddenly, the excitement of the day catching up with her. Tom noticed immediately. "I think someone needs a nap after all this hard work. Why don't you rest for a bit while Grandma and I talk downstairs?" My pulse quickened at his words. Talk? About what? But I kept my expression neutral as Grace climbed into her new bed and I tucked the covers around her. "Will you still be here? When I wake up?" she asked, her eyes already drooping. "I'm not sure, honey. But I'll see you again soon, I promise." I kissed her forehead gently. Dream of butterflies. Downstairs, Tom was waiting in the kitchen, 2 mugs of coffee on the table. The gesture, remembering how I took my coffee, preparing it without asking, felt significant somehow. "Grace missed you," he said as I sat down across from him. "She asked about you every day. I missed her too," I replied honestly. "Thank you for letting me see her today." Tom stared into his coffee mug, his expression troubled. "I shouldn't have used her as leverage. That was wrong." The admission surprised me. Tom had never been quick to acknowledge mistakes. "No, you shouldn't have," I agreed quietly. "She's innocent in all this." "I know," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I was angry and hurt, and I lashed out in the worst possible way. I'm sorry for that part." I noted the careful specificity of his apology. That part. Not everything. Still, it was more than I had expected. "I accept your apology, Tom. Grace should never be caught in the middle of adult disagreements." He nodded, taking a sip of his coffee before continuing. "This house, it's an adjustment. Becky's having a hard time with it. Her influencer friends all live in places like our old neighborhood or better. She feels like she's failing somehow." "Image isn't everything," I said carefully. "This is a lovely home in a good neighborhood." "Easy to say when you have millions," Tom muttered, a flash of the old bitterness returning. I set my mug down firmly. "Tom, I lived modestly my entire life, even after the foundation was established. The cottage in Silver Springs is my only indulgence. and I bought that primarily as an investment property that happens to bring me joy. My happiness has never depended on the size of my house or what others think of my address." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. "Why didn't you tell me about the foundation? All those years, why keep it secret?" The question was fair, though complex. At first, it was new and uncertain. I didn't want to discuss it until I was sure it would succeed. Then, as it grew, I was busy balancing it with my hospital work. "But honestly, Tom?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "You never asked. You never showed interest in my work or my dreams. If you had, I would have shared it all with you." Tom flinched slightly, but didn't argue. "And now? What happens?" "Now? That depends on what you want to happen," I replied. "I'm still your mother. I still love you and Grace very much, but our relationship needs to change. It needs to be based on mutual respect, not financial dependence." "And Becky? She said some pretty awful things to you." "She did," I acknowledged, "and that will take time to heal. But I'm willing to try if she is." Tom nodded slowly, absorbing my words. "I can't promise everything will magically get better. Becky's still angry, and He hesitated. "I'm still processing everything, but Grace needs you in her life, and I think I do too." It wasn't a full reconciliation, not by any means. But it was a beginning, a small crack in the wall of resentment and misunderstanding that had grown between us. "One day at a time," I suggested, "starting with regular visits with Grace. Maybe a weekly dinner together eventually when everyone's ready." "I think we can manage that," Tom agreed. He glanced at his watch. "Becky will be home soon. Maybe it's better if I'm gone before she arrives." I finished for him. "I understand. This is progress, but we shouldn't push too far too fast." As I gathered my purse and prepared to leave, Tom walked me to the door. "Mom," he said, hesitating. "That stuff with Dr. Hayes, asking about your mental state, I shouldn't have done that. It was desperate and wrong." "Yes, it was," I said firmly. "That can never happen again, Tom. I've instructed my lawyer to withdraw the cease and desist letter as a show of good faith, but my boundaries remain firm." He nodded, properly chastened. "Understood." I paused at the threshold. "The pediatric mental health wing at Oak Ridge. Do you remember me mentioning that program at the family dinner?" "Vaguely," Tom admitted. "I was pretty upset that night. The foundation is funding it fully. Construction begins next month, maybe sometime. You, Becky, and Grace might come to the groundbreaking ceremony, as my family." I left the invitation hanging, neither pressing for acceptance nor bracing for rejection. Tom's expression softened slightly. "I'll talk to Becky about it. No promises, but I'll try." As I drove away from the modest house in Westview, my emotions were a complex tangle of hope, caution, and lingering hurt. The visit had gone better than I dared to expect, but the road to genuine reconciliation would be long and likely bumpy. For now, though, I had seen my granddaughter, begun a tentative dialogue with my son, and taken the first small step toward healing our fractured family. The following Friday, a text arrived from Tom with a photo of Grace holding up a drawing, a colorful garden scene with two stick figures labeled Grace and Grandma. The accompanying message read, "She's been asking about visiting your house. Sunday afternoon free for you?" And so began a new routine. Every Sunday, Tom would bring Grace to my house for a few hours. At first, he would drop her off and leave, citing errands or work to catch up on. But gradually, he began staying longer, having a cup of coffee in the kitchen, helping with a bit of gardening, even joining us for dinner occasionally. Becky remained conspicuously absent for the first month of these visits. Tom never explained, and I didn't ask. Whatever process of acceptance or adjustment she was going through, she needed to do it in her own time. Meanwhile, my work with the foundation flourished. The Rural Hospital Initiative launched with remarkable success, bringing much-needed equipment and services to underserved communities. Local newspapers covered the story, and several medical journals highlighted our approach as a model for rural healthcare improvement. In one interview, I was asked why I had chosen to focus on rural hospitals rather than more prestigious urban medical centers. Because everyone deserves quality healthcare, regardless of their zip code or income level, I replied. And often, it's the quietest voices that need to be heard the most urgently. The reporter nodded thoughtfully. The Miller Medical Foundation seems to have appeared almost overnight, yet it's already making significant impacts. Why did you keep such important work under wraps for so long? I smiled, thinking of the irony. I believe the work speaks for itself. The foundation has existed for 15 years, developing gradually like any healthcare initiative. Sometimes the most meaningful growth happens away from the spotlight. The resulting article portrayed me as a humble healthcare visionary, which made me both uncomfortable and quietly proud. The morning it was published, I received a text from Daniel with a link to the piece and a simple message. Have you seen this? The whole town is talking about it. Later that same day, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened it, I found Becky standing on my porch, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Gone was the designer handbag and the carefully curated outfit. Instead, she wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Hi, she said awkwardly. I hope it's okay that I stopped by without calling first. Of course, I replied, hiding my surprise. Would you like to come in? She nodded, following me into the living room. For a moment, she stood taking in the familiar surroundings. The bookshelves, the comfortable furniture, the family photos I had never taken down despite our estrangement. I read the article about you in the Pinecrest Tribune, she said finally. About the rural hospitals. I see, I said neutrally, waiting for her to continue. Becky sat down on the edge of the sofa, perching as if ready for flight. I didn't know. I mean, I knew about the foundation after you told us, but I didn't understand what it actually did, that it helped real people in real ways. I sat in the armchair across from her. That's always been the mission, to improve healthcare access for those who need it most. She nodded, twisting her hands in her lap. I've been thinking a lot since everything happened, about the kind of person I want to be, the kind of example I want to set for Grace. And what have you concluded? I asked gently. That I've been shallow and entitled, she admitted, the words seeming to physically pain her. That I've been so focused on appearances and status that I lost sight of what actually matters. Her candor surprised me. This didn't sound like the Becky who had demanded I continue working to support their lifestyle, who had suggested I move into a retirement home and work as a janitor to earn my keep. What changed? I asked. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Lots of things. Moving to Westview, for one. I was so resistant at first. Felt like I was failing somehow. But our neighbors there are real, down to earth. They bring casseroles when someone's sick and help shovel snow from each other's driveways. No one cares what brand my sweater is or how many Instagram followers I have. I nodded, remembering the close-knit community feeling I'd observed in Westview during my visit. And then there's my influencer career, Becky continued. It's been drying up. The high-end sponsors want people who live high-end lifestyles, who can showcase their products in luxury settings. Our new house doesn't fit the aesthetic. She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. Ridiculous, right? That I'm upset about not being able to sell overpriced skincare to people who can't afford it. Not ridiculous, I said carefully. Change is hard, especially when it affects your identity and income. Becky looked up, seeming surprised by my empathy. Anyway, I've been thinking about going back to school. Did you know I was studying nursing before I met Tom? I was halfway through the program when I dropped out to focus on building my social media presence. This was entirely new information to me. In all the years I'd known Becky, she had never mentioned an interest in healthcare. I didn't know that. Nursing is a noble profession. The community college has an accelerated program for people with prior credits, she continued, a touch of excitement entering her voice. I could finish in 18 months if I work hard. It won't be glamorous, and the pay will be modest at first, but it's meaningful. She hesitated. At least I think it could be. It absolutely can be, I assured her. Some of the most dedicated healthcare professionals I've known were nurses. They're the backbone of the hospital system. Becky nodded, then took a deep breath as if steeling herself. Sarah, I owe you an apology. The things I said to you about working as a janitor, about being a burden, they were cruel and completely uncalled for. I was lashing out because I was scared of losing our lifestyle. But that's no excuse. I'm truly sorry. The apology seemed genuine, her usual polish and calculation absent. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation, but found only remorse and uncertainty. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. It means a lot to hear. I don't expect everything to be instantly fixed, she added quickly. I know trust takes time to rebuild, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to change, to be better. Change isn't easy, I acknowledged, but it's always possible. I hesitated, then decided to extend an olive branch of my own. If you're serious about returning to nursing, the foundation offers scholarships for healthcare education. You would need to apply through the proper channels, of course, but I could point you toward the right resources. Becky's eyes widened. You would do that? After everything? The Foundation's mission is to improve healthcare. Supporting committed nursing students aligns perfectly with that goal, I replied. Then, more personally, I added, and you're still family, Becky, despite everything that's happened. Tears welled in her eyes, the first genuine emotion I had ever seen from her. I don't deserve your kindness. It's not about deserving, I said gently. It's about moving forward and making something positive from a difficult situation. She wiped her eyes, visibly composing herself. I should go. Tom doesn't know I came here. I wanted to do this on my own, to take responsibility for my actions without hiding behind him. As I walked her to the door, a thought occurred to me. Becky, the pediatric mental health wing at Oak Ridge, we're breaking ground next month. If you and Tom would like to come, along with Grace, of course, you would be welcome, as my family. She paused at the threshold. I'd like that, she said softly. And I think Tom would too, though he might be too stubborn to admit it right away. After Becky left, I sat in my garden for a long time, watching the birds at the feeder and reflecting on the unexpected turn of events. Her visit had been the last thing I'd anticipated, her apology even more surprising. Was it genuine? Time would tell. But the Becky who had sat in my living room today was markedly different from the entitled, image-obsessed woman who had suggested I work as a janitor in a retirement home. People could change. I had changed too, over these difficult months, becoming more assertive, more willing to protect my own interests while still keeping my heart open to reconciliation. Perhaps Tom, Becky, and I were all evolving, painfully, but necessarily, into better versions of ourselves. The next day, I received a text from Tom. Becky told me she visited you. Said you were kind to her. Thank you for that. She's been struggling more than she lets on with all the changes. Your Grace meant a lot to her, and to me. I replied simply, family is complicated, but always important. See you and Grace on Sunday? We'll be there, Tom texted back. All three of us, if that's okay. More than okay, I responded, a smile spreading across my face despite the tears that suddenly blurred my vision. I'll make Mom's lasagna. 3 weeks later, Marcus and I stood at the construction site of what would become the Oak Ridge Memorial Pediatric Mental Health Wing. Board members, hospital administrators, local officials, and media representatives gathered for the groundbreaking ceremony. Dr. William Hayes spoke eloquently about the critical need for youth mental health services, particularly in communities facing economic challenges. When it was my turn to speak, I approached the podium and scanned the crowd. There, in the back row, stood Tom, Becky, and Grace, arrived late, perhaps intentionally to avoid too much attention, but present nonetheless. Tom gave a small nod. When our eyes met, and Grace waved enthusiastically. "Healthcare isn't just about treating physical ailments," I began, my voice steady despite the emotion tightening my chest. "It's about caring for the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. Children facing transitions, trauma, or family challenges need specialized support to develop resilience and coping skills. This new wing will provide that support in a safe, nurturing environment." As I continued my prepared remarks about the facility's features and the populations it would serve, I found myself adding something unplanned. The Foundation's work is deeply personal to me. Like many families, mine has weathered difficult transitions and painful misunderstandings. Those experiences have reinforced my belief that with proper support, open communication, and genuine care, healing is always possible for individuals, families, and communities. I looked directly at Tom, Becky, and Grace as I spoke these words. Tom's arm tightened around Becky's shoulders, and she leaned into him slightly. Grace, oblivious to the subtext, simply beamed at me, proud of her grandmother on stage. After the ceremony, as well-wishers and officials mingled with refreshments, my family approached cautiously. Grace broke away first, running to hug me tightly. "That was so good, Grandma. You're famous now." I laughed, stroking her hair. "Hardly famous, sweetheart. Just doing work I believe in." Tom and Becky stood nearby, both looking somewhat uncomfortable but making the effort to be present. Becky had enrolled in the nursing program at the community college, and though she hadn't applied for a foundation scholarship, "I need to do this on my own merit," she had explained. She was throwing herself into her studies with unexpected dedication. "Nice speech," Tom said, the awkwardness in his voice belied by the pride in his eyes. "Very inspiring." "Thank you for coming," I replied simply. "It means a lot to have you here." Dr. Hayes approached, greeting Tom and Becky warmly before turning to me. "Sarah, the board wants a photo of you with the golden shovel at the construction site. Do you mind?" "Not at all," I agreed. Then, on impulse, I added, "Could my family join me? This project is as much about them as it is about me." Dr. Hayes smiled. "Of course, family belongs together, especially for moments like this." As we posed for photographs, Grace insisting on holding the oversized golden shovel with my help, Tom and Becky standing somewhat stiffly beside us, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. We weren't fully healed yet. There were still difficult conversations ahead, trust to be rebuilt, patterns to be changed, but we were trying. All of us. Later that evening, as we shared dinner at my house, the first meal with all four of us together since the confrontation months ago, Grace asked innocently, "Are we a normal family again now, Grandma?" The question hung in the air, weighty, despite the child's simple phrasing. Tom and Becky exchanged glances, clearly uncertain how to respond. I squeezed Grace's hand gently. "We're finding our way to a new normal, sweetheart. Families change and grow, just like you do. But the important thing is that we love each other, even when things get complicated." "Like your butterflies," Tom added unexpectedly. "Remember how they start as one thing and transform into something different but still beautiful?" Grace's face lit up. "Yes, we're like butterflies. Still family, just changing shape." "That's exactly right," I agreed, meeting Tom's eyes across the table with newfound understanding. "Still family, just changing shape. 6 months after the groundbreaking ceremony, the framework of the new pediatric mental health wing was taking shape on the Oak Ridge Memorial campus. What had once been an empty lot was now a hive of activity, construction crews working steadily, architects making regular site visits, and hospital administrators touring the progress with growing excitement. I visited weekly, walking through the half-built corridors with Marcus, discussing details of layout and equipment, visualizing the children who would soon find healing within these walls. On a crisp autumn morning, I arrived for my regular inspection to find Dr. Hayes waiting for me at the construction entrance, an unusual folder tucked under his arm. "Sarah," he greeted me warmly, "I was hoping to catch you today. Do you have a moment before your walkthrough with Marcus?" "Of course," I replied, curious about his formal demeanor. We moved to a quieter spot away from the construction noise. "The board met yesterday," Dr. Hayes began, opening the folder. "We've been discussing the naming of the new wing. Traditionally, facilities of this caliber bear the name of their primary benefactor." I shook my head. "William, we've been over this. I don't want the wing named after me. The foundation is providing the funding, but this is about the children, who will benefit, not about recognition." He smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "I thought you might say that, which is why the board came up with an alternative." He handed me a mock-up of a plaque. "The Grace Wing, where healing transforms lives." My breath caught in my throat. "Grace Wing?" "Not directly named after your granddaughter," Dr. Hayes explained gently, "but carrying the double meaning, both the quality of grace itself, which you've demonstrated throughout this project, and a subtle acknowledgement of the personal inspiration behind it." The tagline about transformation was inspired by Tom's butterfly metaphor, which you shared with me. Tears welled in my eyes as I traced the elegant lettering on the proposed plaque. "It's perfect," I whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "We thought you'd approve," Dr. Hayes said, clearly pleased. "The official naming ceremony will coincide with the ribbon cutting in spring. We hope your entire family will attend." "They will," I said with quiet confidence. In the month since the groundbreaking, our family healing had progressed steadily. Sunday dinners had become a regular tradition again. Tom had accepted a new marketing position with a healthcare consortium, a job that paid less than his previous role, but offered more stability and, to his surprise, greater satisfaction. Becky was thriving in her nursing program, her natural intelligence and newfound determination making her a standout student. And Grace. Grace was simply blossoming, secure once more in the knowledge that her family, though changed, remained intact. After Dr. Hayes left, I continued my tour of the construction site, mentally placing the Grace Wing plaque at the entrance. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, a physical manifestation of how pain and conflict could be transformed into something healing and constructive. When I returned home that afternoon, I found an unexpected package on my doorstep. The return address showed Daniel's veterinary clinic, but the handwriting was Tom's. Curious, I brought it inside and carefully opened it to find a beautifully crafted wooden shadow box. Inside, precisely arranged, were items that made my heart constrict. The program from my retirement party at Cooper's Cafe, pressed flowers from the celebration, a small card signed by everyone who had attended, and in the center, a photograph I hadn't known existed, me surrounded by my hospital colleagues, laughing with genuine joy. A note was tucked into the side of the package. "Mom, I found this while cleaning out some old emails. Jasmine sent these photos to me the day after your retirement party, hoping I'd create a scrapbook for you. I never did. Another failure to add to my list. But perhaps it's not too late to acknowledge what should have been celebrated properly all along. Your retirement wasn't an inconvenience. It was the culmination of decades of service and the beginning of an even more meaningful chapter. I'm sorry I couldn't see that then. Love, Tom. I sat with the shadow box in my lap, tears flowing freely. The simple acknowledgement that my retirement had been something to celebrate, not an inconvenience to manage, healed a wound I hadn't realized was still so raw. I called Tom immediately. When he answered, I could barely speak through my emotion. "Thank you," I managed finally. "The shadow, of course it means so much." "I should have done it months ago," he replied, his own voice thick. Jasmine helped me track down everything. She kept it all, hoping I'd come around eventually. "Better late than never," I said, echoing words my own mother had often used. "It's beautiful, Tom, truly." There was a pause, then Tom said hesitantly, "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you, something Becky and I have been talking about." "Oh?" I wiped my eyes, trying to compose myself. "Grace's birthday is next month. She'll be 8. He took a deep breath. "We were thinking of having the party at your cottage in Silver Springs, if that's okay. She's been asking to see it ever since she found out you have a place by the ocean." The request surprised me. The cottage was my private sanctuary, a place I had kept separate from the family drama. But perhaps that separation was no longer necessary. "I'd love that," I said honestly. "The cottage would be perfect for a birthday celebration." "Great," Tom sounded relieved. "And Mom?" "Becky wanted me to ask if you'd help with the planning." She said, and I quote, "No one creates magical moments for children quite like Sarah does." The compliment from Becky, sincere, specific, and acknowledging my strength as a grandmother, was perhaps an even more meaningful gift than the shadow box. "I'd be honored," I replied. "Tell Becky, thank you." Over the next few weeks, Becky and I collaborated on Grace's birthday celebration, texting ideas back and forth and meeting occasionally to finalize details. Our interactions, once so fraught with tension and resentment, gradually evolved into something resembling genuine camaraderie. Becky's nursing studies had given us common ground, healthcare topics we could discuss without stepping on emotional landmines. Her questions about my hospital experience were thoughtful, her interest in the Foundation's work seemingly genuine. One afternoon, as we sat at my kitchen table addressing invitations for Grace's party, Becky looked up suddenly. "I never thanked you properly," she said. "For what?" I asked, sealing another envelope. "For not giving up on us." She set down her pen, meeting my eyes directly. "After how we treated you, you had every right to walk away completely, to never speak to us again. I would have in your position." I considered her words carefully. "Family is complicated," I said finally, "and valuable, worth fighting for, even when it's difficult." I paused, then added, "Besides, I wasn't entirely blameless." Becky raised an eyebrow. "How do you figure that?" "I enabled the financial dependence," I admitted. "For years, I stepped in whenever you and Tom struggled, never allowing you to face the natural consequences of your choices. I thought I was being helpful, but in some ways, I was undermining your growth as independent adults." Becky nodded. "Slowly. Maybe. But that doesn't excuse how we responded when you finally set boundaries." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. But understanding the dynamics that brought us to that breaking point helps us build something healthier moving forward." "Like what you're doing with the Grace Wing," Becky observed, "taking something painful and transforming it into something constructive." I smiled, pleasantly surprised by her insight. "Exactly like that." Grace's birthday at the Silver Springs cottage exceeded all expectations. The weather cooperated beautifully, sunshine warming the beach just enough for the children to wade in the shallows while adults watched from the comfort of the deck. We had decorated with an underwater theme, transforming the cottage into an oceanic wonderland with blue streamers, shell decorations, and a magnificent cake shaped like a mermaid's castle. Watching Grace run along the shoreline with her friends, her laughter carried on the salt-tinged breeze, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was what mattered, not the inheritance drama, not the hurt feelings, not the status games, just the simple joy of a child celebrated by people who loved her. Tom joined me at the deck railing, handing me a glass of lemonade. "She's having the time of her life," he observed, watching his daughter. "Thank you for this, Mom, for opening your special place to us." "Thank you for asking," I replied. "I should have shared it with you sooner." He shook his head. "No, you were right to have something that was just yours. We all need that. Spaces where we can be fully ourselves." His understanding, so different from the entitled anger he had shown months ago, touched me deeply. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the children play. "The cottage is beautiful," Tom said finally. "Peaceful. I can see why you love it here." "The ocean has always centered me," I explained. "Even as a child, I found clarity by the water. That's partly why I chose this location for the Foundation's headquarters." Tom turned to me, surprise evident in his expression. "The Foundation headquarters is here? In Silver Springs?" I nodded. "Just down the coast, a converted boathouse, with offices overlooking the water." Marcus thought I was crazy. Most medical foundations operate from major cities, but I wanted something different. A place where creative thinking could flourish. "Could I see it sometime?" Tom asked, an unexpected note of interest in his voice. "The headquarters, I mean." "Of course," I said, trying not to show my surprise at his request. "Anytime." Before he could respond, Grace came running up the beach, soaking wet and grinning from ear to ear. "Dad, Grandma, come see what we found. There's a whole tide pool with starfish and sea anemones." Tom glanced at me, a question in his eyes. I laughed and set down my lemonade. "Let's go see these starfish. The conversation can wait." Together, we followed Grace down to the shoreline, where indeed a magnificent tide pool had formed among the rocks. As we crouched beside it, Grace pointing out each discovery with infectious enthusiasm, I caught Tom watching me. Not the tide pool, but my face as I engaged with his daughter. Something in his expression had softened, as if he were seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time in years. The party continued until sunset, when parents arrived to collect their children, full of sugar and stories about their beach adventures. As the last guest departed, Grace collapsed on the cottage sofa, happily exhausted. "Best birthday ever," she declared sleepily. "Can we come back next weekend, Grandma?" "Let's let Grandma have her peaceful cottage back," Becky suggested, gathering, wrapping paper and discarded decorations. "We've invaded enough for one day." "It's hardly an invasion when you're invited," I pointed out. "And yes, Grace, you're welcome back any time. Perhaps for an overnight stay next time? The guest room has a perfect view of the sunrise over the water." Grace's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? Can I, Mom? Dad?" Tom and Becky exchanged glances, one of those silent communications that long-married couples develop. "That sounds lovely," Becky said finally. "Maybe next weekend, if Grandma is free?" And so another tradition was born. Every other weekend, Grace would stay overnight at the cottage, sometimes with Tom or Becky joining us, sometimes just the two of us. During these visits, our bond deepened beyond that of grandmother and granddaughter. We became confidants, explorers, fellow adventurers, discovering the wonders of the coastline together. One such weekend, as we collected shells at dawn, Grace asked a question that caught me off guard. "Grandma, were you sad when no one came to your retirement party?" I paused, considering how to answer honestly without burdening her with adult complexities. "Yes," I said finally. "I was sad. Endings are important, and I wanted to share that moment with the people I love most." She nodded solemnly, adding another perfect scallop shell to her bucket. "Dad says he made a big mistake. He says sometimes grown-ups mess up really badly, and then they have to work extra hard to fix things." Your dad is very wise, I replied, touched by Tom's apparent conversations with Grace about our family situation. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how we respond afterward, whether we try to make things right. Like with apologies. And trying to do better? Grace suggested. Exactly like that. She considered this, her young face serious beyond her years. I think Dad and Mom are trying really hard to do better. I think so too, I agreed gently. And that takes courage. Grace slipped her small hand into mine as we continued our beachcombing. I'm glad we're a family again, she said simply. Even if we're different now. Different can be wonderful, I assured her, squeezing her hand. Sometimes it's even better than before. The following week, Tom surprised me with a visit to my house. Not for Sunday dinner, not to drop off Grace, but on a random Tuesday afternoon. He looked uncharacteristically nervous as I invited him in. Everything okay? I asked, leading him to the living room. Fine, he assured me quickly. Great, actually. I wanted to talk to you about something. An idea I've been considering. I gestured for him to continue, curious about what could have prompted this impromptu visit. I've been thinking a lot about the foundation, Tom began, especially after you mentioned the headquarters in Silver Springs, the Rural Hospital Initiative, the Grace Wing. They're making real differences in people's lives. They are, I agreed, still uncertain where he was heading. My new job with the healthcare consortium has been eye-opening, he continued. I'm seeing firsthand how marketing principles can be applied to public health messaging, preventative care initiatives, community outreach. I nodded encouragingly, beginning to understand his direction. Mom, the foundation is doing incredible work, but from what you've said, your public outreach is minimal. You're improving healthcare access, but how many people know about the services available to them? How many potential donors or partners aren't aware of what you're accomplishing? It was a fair point. The foundation had always operated somewhat quietly, focusing on implementation rather than publicity. Go on, I prompted. I'd like to help, Tom said, the words coming faster now as his enthusiasm grew. Not as your son, but as a marketing professional with healthcare experience. The foundation needs a strategic communication plan, community engagement initiatives, digital presence optimization. I blinked, processing his offer. You want to work for the foundation? With the foundation, he clarified. As a consultant initially, perhaps evolving into something more permanent if it's a good fit. And before you worry about nepotism, he held up a hand as I started to speak. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'll submit a formal proposal, portfolio, references, everything you'd expect from any consultant. The foundation board can evaluate my qualifications objectively. The earnestness in his expression, the professional approach to his offer, this wasn't the entitled son demanding support, but a skilled professional offering valuable expertise. The transformation was remarkable. I think that's an excellent idea, I said sincerely. The foundation could definitely benefit from stronger communication strategies, and your healthcare marketing experience would be particularly relevant. Tom's face lit up with relief and excitement. Really? You're open to it? Absolutely. Send your proposal to Marcus. He handles initial vendor and consultant evaluations. I'll recuse myself from the decision-making process to avoid any conflict of interest. That's perfect, Tom agreed quickly. I wouldn't want special treatment. I want to earn this on my own merits. As he left an hour later, after discussing his preliminary ideas in greater detail, I felt a strange mixture of pride and wonder. My son, who once resented my professional accomplishments, now wanted to contribute his own skills to the mission. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very foundation that had initially driven a wedge between us might now become a vehicle for deeper connection. True to his word, Tom submitted a comprehensive proposal to Marcus, who was impressed enough to schedule a formal presentation to the board. I kept my distance from the process, wanting Tom to succeed or fail on his own merits. When Marcus called to inform me that the board had unanimously approved a 6-month consulting contract with Tom, I felt a surge of pride untainted by doubt. This was Tom's achievement, earned through his own efforts and expertise. The day Tom began his consulting work, I received a text from Becky. He left the house this morning looking like a kid on the first day of school, nervous and excited. Thank you for giving him this chance. I replied truthfully, I didn't give him anything. He earned this opportunity through his own merit and hard work. Still, Becky texted back, not every mother-in-law would be so supportive after everything we put you through. Grace and I are lucky to have you in our lives. Her words warmed me, another sign of how far we had come from the bitter confrontations of the past year. Later that week, when Becky invited me to attend her nursing program's mid-year showcase, where students presented research projects to faculty and community healthcare providers, I accepted immediately, honored to be included in this significant moment of her academic journey. The showcase was held in the community college's main auditorium, transformed for the evening with professional displays and refreshments. Becky's project focused on communication strategies for pediatric patients, techniques to reduce anxiety, and improve understanding during medical procedures. My research partner and I interviewed child life specialists at 3 hospitals, she explained as she guided me through her presentation. We found that simple interventions, age-appropriate explanations, comfort items from home, parental involvement, dramatically reduced distress during procedures. This is excellent work, Becky, I said sincerely, impressed by the thoroughness of her research and the practical applications she proposed. Have you considered how these findings might be implemented at Oak Ridge, particularly in the new pediatric mental health wing? Her eyes widened. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Do you think they might be interested? I think Dr. Hayes would be very interested, I confirmed. The Grace Wing is still defining its operational protocols. Your research could help shape their approach to patient communication. Becky's face lit up with genuine passion, so different from the calculated ambition I had seen in her pursuit of influencer status. That would be incredible. To think that our project could actually help real children. That's the beauty of healthcare work, I told her. Everything we do, every improvement we make, directly impacts people's lives. It's why I never left Oak Ridge, even after the foundation was established. I needed that direct connection to the people we were serving. Becky nodded thoughtfully. I get that now. I really do. As we continued through the showcase, Becky introduced me to her instructors and classmates, proudly identifying me as both her mother-in-law and a healthcare administrator. The respect in her voice when she mentioned my work was yet another small miracle in our evolving relationship. Later that evening, as Tom, Becky, Grace, and I shared dinner at a local restaurant to celebrate Becky's successful presentation, I found myself observing my family with a sense of wonder. Here we were, sharing a meal, engaging in genuine conversation, supporting each other's endeavors, all things that had seemed impossible in the dark days following my retirement announcement. Grace, perceptive as always, caught me watching them. "Why are you smiling like that, Grandma?" she asked. "Because I'm happy," I told her honestly. "Happy to be here with all of you." "Even though we forgot your retirement party?" she pressed, clearly repeating something she had overheard. Tom nearly choked on his water. "Grace, we don't need to bring that up." "It's okay," I assured him, then turned to Grace. "Yes, even though that happened. Sometimes in families we make mistakes, we hurt each other. But if we're willing to acknowledge those mistakes, apologize, and work to do better, relationships can heal. They can even become stronger than before. Like when I broke Mom's favorite vase, Grace reasoned, and I said sorry and used my allowance to help buy a new one, and now Mom says she likes the new vase even better. Exactly like that, I laughed. amazed at her ability to distill complex emotional truths into childlike parallels. Tom reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. "We're still working on making it up to you, Mom. The new vase isn't quite in place yet." "It's getting there," I assured him, returning the gentle pressure. Day by day, it's getting there. As winter melted into spring, the Gracewing neared completion. Dr. Hayes invited me for a private tour before the official ribbon-cutting ceremony, allowing me to see the finished spaces without the distraction of crowds. The facility exceeded my expectations. Warm, welcoming spaces designed specifically for children's needs, state-of-the-art therapy rooms, family consultation areas, and even an indoor garden where young patients could connect with nature regardless of weather. "It's magnificent," I told Dr. Hayes as we stood in the central atrium, sunlight streaming through skylights onto the colorful floor tiles. "Better than I could have imagined." "Much of the credit goes to your son," Dr. Hayes replied. "His marketing consultancy expanded into some valuable design input. The butterfly motif throughout the wing was his suggestion. Something about transformation, being central to the healing process." I blinked back tears, recognizing the reference to Tom's butterfly metaphor from months ago. Without my knowledge, he had woven that symbol of family transformation into the very fabric of the wing. "The ribbon cutting is set for next Saturday," Dr. Hayes continued. "The board hopes your entire family will participate in the ceremony." "We'll be there," I promised, imagining Grace's delight when she saw the butterflies incorporated throughout, the space that shared her name. As I left the hospital that day, I received a text from Daniel. "Can you meet at Cooper's Cafe tomorrow? Need to discuss something important." The message concerned me. Daniel had been a steadfast support throughout the family drama, but we hadn't needed to discuss anything urgently in months. I texted back my agreement, wondering what could be prompting this meeting. The following morning, I arrived at Cooper's Cafe to find Daniel already waiting at our usual table, 2 steaming mugs before him. His expression was serious, but not grim. "Everything okay?" I asked as I slid into the seat across from him. "Fine," he assured me quickly. "Better than fine, actually, but I wanted to talk to you before making any announcements." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. "I'm retiring," he said simply. "Selling my veterinary practice to my associate. The paperwork is almost finalized." "Daniel, that's wonderful," I exclaimed. "You've been talking about cutting back for years." He nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "There's more. I'm moving to Silver Springs. Found a little cottage just down the coast from yours. Needs work, but the location is perfect." The news delighted me. Daniel had become more than just my late husband's brother over the past difficult year. He had been my rock, my confidant, my most steadfast supporter. Having him nearby in Silver Springs felt right somehow. "What prompted the decision?" I asked, genuinely curious. Daniel had been established in Pinecrest for decades. He shrugged slightly. "Life's too short for someday. Watching you reclaim your life this past year, standing your ground, pursuing your passions, rebuilding relationships on healthier terms, it inspired me. I've been talking about retiring to the coast for 20 years. It's time to stop talking and start doing." His words touched me deeply. In all the chaos of the past year, I hadn't considered that my journey might influence others beyond my immediate family. "There's one more thing," Daniel added, his tone shifting slightly. "I want to set up a foundation of my own. Nothing as grand as yours, but focused on animal welfare in underserved communities. Veterinary care for families who can't afford it, support for shelter adoption programs, that sort of thing." "That sounds wonderful," I said sincerely. "Your expertise would be invaluable in that field." "I was hoping you might share some guidance," he admitted. "The legal structure, operational considerations, it's all new territory for me." I'd be happy to help, I assured him. And I know Marcus would be glad to offer advice as well. Daniel's expression relaxed into a genuine smile. I thought about waiting until after the Grace Wing ribbon cutting to bring this up, but... he hesitated, then continued. I wanted to ask if you'd consider attending the Coastal Preservation Society's spring gala with me next month. As my date, not just my friend and former sister-in-law. The invitation surprised me, though. Perhaps it shouldn't have. Over the past year, our relationship had evolved, deepening into something that transcended family obligation. Still, this was unexpected territory. Daniel must have read the surprise in my expression. Too soon? He asked gently. Or just not interested? Either is completely fine, Sarah. Our friendship is too important to risk with awkwardness. No, it's not that, I assured him quickly. I'm just... processing. We've been family for so long, in a different way. We still are family, he said. That doesn't change. This would just be exploring another dimension of our relationship. If you're open to it, no pressure. I considered his words carefully. At 62, I had assumed that romance was a closed chapter in my life. But why should it be? The past year had been about reclaiming my identity, establishing new patterns, embracing unexpected opportunities. The gala sounds lovely, I said finally. And yes, I'd be happy to attend as your date. Daniel's smile warmed his entire face. Wonderful. And Sarah? If it feels weird or uncomfortable, we can always go back to being just friends and family. No harm in trying something new. As I left Cooper's Cafe that morning, I felt a strange sense of possibilities opening before me. Possibilities I hadn't considered or permitted myself to imagine. The foundation was thriving, my family was healing, and now this unexpected invitation to explore a new kind of relationship with a man I had respected and valued for decades. Life after retirement was turning out to be anything but the quiet, uneventful existence Tom and Becky had once assumed it would be. Instead, it was rich with purpose, connection, and even potential romance, all because I had finally stood up for myself when my family forgot my retirement party. Everything okay? Jasmine asked when I arrived for our weekly lunch date, clearly reading something in my expression. You look different today. I smiled, settling into the restaurant, booth across from her. Everything is better than okay. The Grace Wing is ready for the ribbon cutting. Tom's marketing consultancy with the foundation is going extraordinarily well. Becky's nursing program has reconnected her with her original passion for healthcare. And, Jasmine prompted, knowing me too well to miss that I was holding something back. And Daniel asked me on a date, I admitted. A real date, not just a family outing or friendly support. Jasmine's face lit up with delight. About time. I've seen how he looks at you for months now. It's too soon to say where it might lead, I cautioned. But it feels right to be open to the possibility. That's all anyone can ask, Jasmine agreed, being open to possibilities. As we continued our lunch discussing the upcoming ribbon-cutting ceremony and Daniel's retirement plans, I reflected on how profoundly my life had changed since that painful day when my family had forgotten my retirement party. What had begun as heartbreak had transformed, like the butterfly in Tom's metaphor, into something entirely new and unexpectedly beautiful. The path hadn't been easy. There had been confrontations, tears, legal maneuvers, and painful truths exposed. But through it all, a stronger, more authentic family had emerged, one based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence, on genuine appreciation rather than obligation. And I had emerged stronger too, more assertive in my boundaries, more confident in my worth, more open to new possibilities. The retirement my family had once dismissed as premature had become the gateway to the richest chapter of my life. As I drove home that afternoon, I found myself humming a melody I hadn't thought of in years. my mother's favorite song, about new beginnings and second chances. The road ahead was uncharted, but for the first time in decades, that uncertainty felt exhilarating rather than frightening. Whatever came next, with the foundation, with my family, with Daniel, I would face it on my own terms, with clear boundaries and an open heart. The forgotten retirement party had been painful, but it had also been necessary, the catalyst for changes that none of us could have imagined. And for that, strangely enough, I was grateful. The day of the Grace Wing ribbon cutting arrived with perfect spring weather, sunshine bathing the Oak Ridge Memorial Campus, flowering trees in full bloom, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of new beginnings. I arrived early, wanting a few moments alone in the space before the crowds gathered. The butterflies Tom had incorporated into the design seemed to dance along the walls in the morning light, symbols of transformation that felt more meaningful with each passing day. Dr. Hayes found me in the central atrium, gazing up at the stained glass butterfly installation that cast colorful shadows across the floor. "It's quite something, isn't it?" he said, following my gaze upward. "Every detail designed with healing in mind." I nodded, emotion tightening my throat. "It exceeds all my hopes, William. The children who come here will feel safe, valued, understood." "That was always your priority," he acknowledged. "Even when you ran hospital administration, the patients came first, politics and paperwork second." We walked through the quiet spaces one last time before they would be filled, with visitors, board members, and media. The therapy rooms with their soothing colors and comfortable furniture. The family consultation areas designed to feel like living rooms rather than clinical spaces. The small library filled with books about emotions, resilience, and growth. "Your family should be arriving soon," Dr. Hayes noted, checking his watch. Tom texted that they're on their way. The mention of family brought a rush of gratitude. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined us all gathering for this milestone, united in purpose and pride. The forgotten retirement party had been painful, but it had led us here. To a deeper understanding, a more authentic connection, a shared vision of what family could be. The doors opened precisely at 10, and guests began to arrive. Hospital, board members, local officials, healthcare providers who would be working in the new wing, all flowing into the atrium with expressions of wonder and approval. I greeted them warmly, thanking them for their support, but my eyes kept drifting to the entrance, watching for my family. They arrived together, Tom in a suit I hadn't seen before, Becky looking professional in a simple dress that reflected her new nursing student identity, and Grace beaming in a special outfit adorned with, of course, butterflies. Behind them came Daniel, his steady presence a comfort as always. Grace spotted me first, running across the atrium with outstretched arms. "Grandma, this place has my name, and butterflies everywhere." I knelt to embrace her, inhaling the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "It does indeed. What do you think of it?" "It's beautiful," she declared with absolute certainty. "The kids who come here won't be scared at all." Tom and Becky approached more slowly, taking in the space with evident awe. "Mom, this is incredible," Tom said softly. "The foundation has created something truly special here." "We all created it," I corrected gently. "Your butterfly concept became the guiding vision for the entire design." Tom looked momentarily embarrassed by the acknowledgement, but I could see the pride in his eyes. 6 months into his marketing consultancy with the foundation, he had found a professional purpose that aligned with his skills and values, a far cry from the corporate ladder climbing that had once dominated his ambitions. Becky squeezed my hand warmly. "My clinical rotation. Supervisor says this facility will transform pediatric mental health care in the region. She's already talking about the specialized training protocols they're developing for nursing students who want to work here. Perhaps you'll be one of them," I suggested, noting how her eyes lit up at the possibility. Daniel joined us, completing our circle. The place looks magnificent, Sarah. You must be so proud. Before I could respond, Dr. Hayes approached with a gentle reminder. Sarah, we should begin the ceremony. Everyone's assembled. The formal program unfolded at the entrance to the wing, where the Grace Wing plaque would be unveiled. Board members spoke about the vision. Behind the facility, Dr. Hayes detailed the services that would be offered and the populations that would be served. A child psychologist explained the evidence-based approaches that would guide treatment. Finally, it was my turn to speak. As I stepped to the podium, I saw my family in the front row, Tom and Becky holding hands, Grace between them, Daniel standing supportively nearby. The journey that had brought us here flashed through my mind. The pain, the confrontations, the slow rebuilding of trust, and ultimately, the transformation of our relationships. Healthcare is deeply personal, I began, my voice steady despite the emotion in my heart. We come to it during our most vulnerable moments, seeking not just medical intervention but human connection, understanding, and hope. Children facing mental health challenges need this connection more than most. A safe harbor where they can process difficult emotions, develop coping skills, and build resilience that will serve them throughout their lives. I gestured to the wine's butterfly imagery visible through the wing's entrance. The butterfly has become the symbol of this facility for good reason. It reminds us that transformation is possible, that growth often requires struggle, and that what emerges from that struggle can be more beautiful and resilient than what came before. My eyes found Grace in the audience, her young face solemn, as she absorbed my words. The name Grace Wing carries multiple meanings. It honors the quality of grace itself, the dignity, compassion, and kindness that should infuse all healthcare. It acknowledges that second chances and new beginnings are possible even after difficult chapters. And yes, I smiled gently, it carries personal significance for my family, particularly my granddaughter Grace, who embodies the curiosity, resilience, and joy that we hope to nurture in every child who comes through these doors. As I continued, describing the specific programs that would be offered, I noticed Tom discreetly wiping a tear from his eye, Becky squeezing his hand supportively. This moment of vulnerability from my once defensive son touched me deeply, evidence of how far we had all come. In closing, I said, I want to thank everyone who has made this vision a reality: the foundation board, the hospital administration, the construction teams, and especially my family, whose support and input have been invaluable throughout this journey. Together, we have created something that will serve our community for generations to come. The audience applauded warmly as Dr. Hayes joined me at the podium for the official unveiling of the plaque. As the cover was removed, revealing the elegant Grace Wing lettering, a spontaneous cheer erupted from the crowd. Grace's face lit up with wonder, and Tom wrapped an arm around her shoulders proudly. After the ceremony, as guests toured the facility and enjoyed refreshments in the atrium, Tom approached me privately. I have something for you, he said, handing me a small gift box. A token of appreciation for everything. Inside was a delicate butterfly pendant in silver and amber, simple, elegant, meaningful. It's beautiful, I said sincerely, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. Thank you, Tom. Grace helped pick it out, he admitted. She said it had to be amber because that's the color of hope. He paused, seeming to gather his courage. Mom, I know we've come a long way this past year, but I want to say explicitly, I'm sorry for forgetting your retirement party, for treating your retirement as an inconvenience rather than the significant milestone it was. You deserved better. The apology, direct, specific, unqualified, was perhaps an even more precious gift than the pendant. Thank you for saying that, I replied softly. It means a lot to hear it. I'm learning, he said with a small, self-deprecating smile. Slowly, maybe, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do, I assured him. Try our best, learn from our mistakes, and keep moving forward. Later, as the event wound down and guests began to depart, Daniel suggested we all continue the celebration with dinner at my cottage in Silver Springs. The weather's perfect for a barbecue on the deck, he pointed out, and I happen to know Grace has been practicing her s'mores-making technique for just such an occasion. Grace's enthusiastic agreement settled the matter, and by late afternoon, we had gathered at the cottage, my once private sanctuary now filled with family laughter and conversation. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting golden light across the water, I found myself on the deck with Daniel, watching Tom and Becky help Grace construct elaborate s'mores by the fire pit on the beach. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Daniel asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "I was just thinking about how life surprises us," I replied honestly. "A year ago, I was devastated when they forgot my retirement party. I thought our relationships might be permanently fractured. Now look at us." Daniel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Painful moments often become turning points if we let them. Your courage in setting boundaries, in refusing to be taken for granted, that's what made this transformation possible." "Not just my courage," I acknowledged. "Tom and Becky had to be willing to change too, and they have, in ways I never expected." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the tableau below. Tom was showing Grace how to perfectly toast a marshmallow without burning it, while Becky arranged graham crackers and chocolate pieces in preparation. Their faces, illuminated by the firelight, showed none of the status anxiety and materialism that had once dominated their worldview. "They're different people now," Daniel observed, following my gaze. "Or perhaps they're finally becoming who they were meant to be all along, without the pressure of keeping up appearances." "I think you're right," I agreed. "The move to Westview was the best thing that could have happened to them. It forced them to reassess what truly matters." As if sensing our conversation, Tom looked up and waved, beckoning us to join them on the beach. Daniel offered his hand, a simple gesture that carried new meaning since his invitation to the Coastal Preservation Society Gala. I took it without hesitation, and together we descended the steps to the sand. The evening unfolded with simple pleasures. Perfectly toasted marshmallows, stories shared around the fire, Grace's impromptu dance performance as the stars emerged overhead. As I watched my family, this new, healthier version of my family, I felt a deep sense of contentment that had nothing to do with financial security or professional accomplishments. This was the retirement I had truly wanted all along, meaningful, work with the foundation balanced by rich personal connections and new adventures. After Grace had fallen asleep on the cottage sofa, exhausted from the excitement of the day, Tom, Becky, Daniel, and I sat on the deck with cups of tea. The sound of waves providing a soothing backdrop to our conversation. "Mom," Tom said suddenly, "I've been meaning to ask you something about the inheritance from your employer, Catherine." I tensed slightly, old fears surfacing. Was he still fixated on the money after all? "What about it?" I asked carefully. "I realized we never asked you about her, who she was, what she meant to you. We were so focused on the money that we never considered the relationship behind it." His tone held genuine regret. "Would you tell us about her?" The question, so different from anything Tom would have asked a year ago, moved me deeply. "Catherine was extraordinary," I began, memories flooding back. "Brilliant, compassionate, wickedly funny when you least expected it. She hired me as her hospital administrator when everyone else thought she was crazy to promote a woman with no formal business education." For the next hour, I shared stories about Catherine, her pioneering work in hospital administration, her mentorship of female healthcare professionals, her visionary approach to patient care. Tom and Becky listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions, genuinely interested in understanding this important chapter of my life. "She sounds remarkable," Becky said when I finally fell silent. "No wonder she recognized something special in you." "I like to think we recognize something in each other," I replied. We both believed healthcare could be more compassionate without sacrificing efficiency. That's the philosophy that guides the foundation now. Tom nodded thoughtfully. Her legacy lives on through your work. That's beautiful, Mom. As the evening drew to a close and Tom carried a sleeping Grace to the guest room they would share for the night, I found myself alone with Daniel on the deck once more. The moon cast a silver path across the water, an invitation to new horizons. Quite a day, Daniel observed, his voice soft in the darkness. The ribbon cutting, the family celebration, this conversation about Catherine. How are you feeling? I considered his question carefully. Complete, I said finally. A year ago, I was hurt and angry, unsure of my place in my own family. Today, I feel like all the pieces have finally fallen into place, not in the arrangement I expected, but in one that feels right nonetheless. Daniel's hand found mine on the railing, his touch warm and reassuring. That's what matters in the end, isn't it? Not that life unfolds according to plan, but that we find meaning and connection along the way. As we stood together watching the moonlight on the water, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment, the forgotten retirement party that had forced me to stand up for myself, the painful confrontations that had cleared the way for authentic connection, the professional work that had given me purpose beyond family roles. All of it necessary, all of it leading here. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, foundation decisions, family dynamics, the uncharted territory of potential romance with Daniel. But tonight, under the vast canopy of stars, with the sound of waves marking time's passage, I felt perfectly at peace with wherever the journey might lead next. The retirement my family had once dismissed had become the gateway to the richest chapter of my life, proof that endings, even painful ones, often contain the seeds of beautiful beginnings. All we need is the courage to plant them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.